How's your Yeats?
Have you read Vision?
Never heard of it.
Oh, it's completely brilliant. And impossible. He says that life is round. That we're stuck on this wheel of living and dying, an endless circle, until someone breaks it. You walked in here, you ruptured the pattern. Bang! The whole world gets wider. How did you...
It's consonants. A reiteration of themes.
Are you a writer? Because I've got a job for a writer.
No, I'm not.
Well, you're not anything yet.
And that was a clip of Daniel Radcliffe as Allen Ginsberg in Kill Your Darlings. I'm delighted to say I've been joined by the man himself. Daniel, hello, good afternoon.
Hello, sir. Thank you for having me.
Well, it's a pleasure as ever. The last time you were on the show was for Woman in Black.
Yes.
And as I recall, we had a conversation about who should be allowed in to go and see it, you know, the certificate, and at what age it was going to be inappropriate for your younger fans.
Yeah.
No problems with this movie.
Well, I don't think there'll be, sir, any problems with the rating. I don't think they'll have, like, as we did on Woman in Black, sort of parents taking their kids thinking, oh, this looks like a nice family film. You know, it's, yes, I don't think that we're in danger of that with this one.
There's not gonna, please, Mum, can I go and see Kill Your Darlings?
Please, Mum, I really want to see Allen Ginsberg's story. No.
Okay, so so that having been sorted out, tell us, because this is Allen Ginsberg, and instantly people have an image, I think, of Allen Ginsberg from later on in life with a big beard and slightly bald. So, but this is Allen Ginsberg, 1944. Just tell us about the film and where we are with this, Daniel.
Yeah, absolutely. I play, as you say, Allen Ginsberg at the age that nobody really has that image of him at sort of 17, 18, before he went bald and took all his clothes off. And you know, I play him coming to Columbia University, and meeting Lucien Carr, who is somebody that nobody really knows about, but was a founder member, really, of the Beat generation, and an incredibly important part of it. So Alan met Lucien in 1944 and fell head over heels in love with him. Your first sort of teenage, it's more than a teenage crush, though. It is sort of that first love. And Lucien, it was the person that introduced Alan to Jack Kerouac and William Burroughs, and so really was responsible for the forming of that movement in some way. And he, at the same time as all this is going on, Lucien was involved with in kind of a very overbearing relationship with an older man called David Camera, played in the film by Michael C. Hall, and after many efforts to sort of extricate himself from this relationship, he ends up murdering David. And that murder and the aftermath of it, which all of these Beat writers were sort of involved in, sort of forms the basis of our story. And you know, that the fact that this was such an impactful event in all their lives is, I don't know, I think it's really important. I think it's a great story to tell because it is culturally significant, because it was what fired these guys up into writing, and really nobody knows this story.
So it's like the Beat movement before there was a Beat movement.
Yeah, absolutely. You know, I mean, I think one of the things that John, our director, did, which really helped us and focused us all, was he didn't let us, or didn't want us to research our characters outside the period that we play them in the film. Now, obviously, you can't avoid, in reading about Allen Ginsberg or looking at documentaries about them online, that you can't avoid hearing stuff about them in later life, and you let that sort of inform things as it will. But the main focus, I think, it was made easier for us because we were just focused on playing these guys as young men, not as the icons that they become.
You say it's an important story, Daniel. Explain why. Explain why it matters, and why, as far as you're concerned, the Beat poets mattered.
Well, I mean, in a sense, you can only say it matters if you are interested in the Beat poets. But if you are interested in what was a very significant cultural movement in America that, you know, came to the fore really in the 50s and 60s, but definitely had its genesis in the 40s, you know, it was this event and this moment in time where all these guys met that, you know, really fired them into. I mean, it was Alan's first piece of prose that he ever wrote was the Night in Question, which is the short story he writes in the film, which is his deposition. And the first book that Bill and Jack ever wrote together was And the Hippos Were Boiled in Their Tanks, which was about the murder and was suppressed for 60-something years. So yeah, I mean, it is, and I think what's impressive about the Beats is that they do find relevance with every generation, which certainly can't be said of all poets. I mean, they really do a very good job of perpetuating themselves, and I think it's in part to do with how they wrote as much as what they wrote. You know, there are two types of poets, my English teacher said to me, which was there are people that write poetically about their lives, and there are people that live poetically and write about it. And that's, I think, what the Beats did. They had that kind of wild abandon that you also find in the punk movement, and that sort of the idea that you didn't have to care what tradition said anymore, and that everything was up for debate and could be questioned, was sort of a very radical idea at the time, and I think that's the idea that still appeals to every generation as they experience their own rebellion.
Maybe it's the same with every movement, but I guess it'd be quite easy for all of the poets here in 1944, 45 to appear a little self-obsessed, shall we say?
Yes, and it's sort of you could also, I mean, you could possibly argue it's sort of the job of a poet to be self-obsessed. I mean, not self-obsessed as much as definitely self-aware. But yeah, I mean, I think you could, you know, it's important to say when you're making a film about the Beats that, like, they are pretentious. There's no, you know, you don't need to excuse that or pretend that you don't. I certainly am not going to pretend that I like all the poetry, because God knows a lot of it's terrible, in my opinion. Some of it's amazing, but you know, you can't win with every one. And yeah, so I don't know that self-obsession is part and parcel necessarily of their movement, but
maybe it's highlighted by the fact that, as the film makes very clear, it's 1944.
Yes, there's a war on.
There is a war on, and there's the mother of all wars going on, and yet back at university, these guys are talking about beat and meter and rhyme, and I suppose it's that juxtaposition which highlights that. Yeah,
absolutely. You know, Alan's older brother was off in the war, and you know, it is something that I'm glad we draw attention to in the film, that as much as they are having these high-flung debates, there is something a lot more serious going on which they're not involved with. But you know, I also think there is an argument you can make that, although the arguments they're having are much more pretentious and about things a lot less practical in the world, they are still important arguments to have, and these people did end up going on to change things, especially, you know, in the way we talk about censorship and what we are allowed to say. You know, they were fighting a very different fight, and you know, and maybe not such a inherently heroic one could argue, but you know, definitely a very important one.
Tell us about the director John Krokidas, who's new to most people, I think. Dan, just explain why you were sort of enticed by him into this, and why he thought that you were the ideal person to be Ginsberg.
I mean, I met John for the first time in about 2008 when we first started talking about doing this film. It went through sort of ups and downs, as independent productions do during that time, and you know, that's part and parcel of it. And we were eventually able to make it, which was great. But you know, in terms of John, a lot of people have been asking about, you know, do you have any doubts working with a first-time director? And the truth is that nothing about John says first-time director when you meet him. He's incredibly assured. He's also, you know, he's been with this script for this film for almost 10 years of his life, and you know, that I'd rather work with, you know, a director who's never made a film before but has an extraordinary vision for his film, rather than, you know, somebody who's done 20 movies and couldn't care less.
And did he explain to you why he wanted it to be? I mean, clearly you're a huge bankable star. That's one.
Yeah, I mean, I hope it was not that, though.
So what was it that he saw in your performances that he thought you'd bring to Ginsberg?
Well, I mean, I auditioned for the part, and he'd see me on stage in Equus in New York, and sent me the script and asked me to audition, and so I can only assume it was that.
I guess people are surprised to hear the fact that you still need to audition for anything.
Well, I mean, I asked to audition for this because I know that often directors won't assume, or they will assume that I won't audition, and because a lot of actors don't, and I think that's crap. And so I like to say when I meet people, particularly if I'm very passionate about it, that I would like to, because I understand John had only seen me in Equus and Harry Potter, so there was no way he could have seen the range required to play the role unless he auditioned me, and I wanted to know that I was being wanted for the right reasons and not just because I was to use your words, bankable star.
Yeah. I don't think that's an issue, though, is it? I don't know. That was a controversial thing to say. I think you are. I think that's established.
Well, for
now. Did you know, Daniel, presumably that everybody did, that when you'd done the sex scene, that it would obviously get a lot of talk, not because it is particularly explicit, not explicit at all, really, but because it's you doing it?
Yeah, I did. I mean, it's not surprising. It's just a little sad, really, and it's a sad reflection of the way things are, that it's such a, I don't know, that it's become such a talking point. Dane DeHaan's character murders somebody in this film. No one talks about that. Everyone just talks about gay sex scene and why that's shocking.
But you always knew, you just sort of accepted that was the way it was going to go.
Well, I mean, I'd done Equus, so I guess I had some experience of, I knew that, if a salacious headline can be written, it will be. So, it wasn't surprising as much as, not even disappointing, to be honest, because I really hadn't set my expectations that high in terms of, I knew people would want to talk about it, but I'm also kind of practical about it. If that's what gets people in to see the film, and then they end up seeing an hour and a half long drama about the origin of the beats, then I'm happy with that.
Dane DeHaan needs to be mentioned specifically. You've mentioned him a number of times. He puts in a compelling performance, Daniel, doesn't he?
He's fantastic.
And as soon as the camera rests on him, you go, oh wow, okay, we're interested in this guy.
Yeah, no, I mean Dane's a brilliant actor and a great person, and he really has brought something fantastic to Lucian as a part, because it could be played a number of ways, and it could be. The challenge, I think, with a part like Lucian is to make him, while he's also incredibly emotionally manipulative and cold, the very important part about Lucian is that charisma and that charm and the ability he had to just, sort of draw anyone in that he wanted and make them fall in love with him. And yeah, Dane does that brilliantly in the film, and he's I'm not going to be one of those people who says oh, Dane's one to watch for the future, because as far as I'm concerned, he's arrived and is one of the best actors around.
Is it true you're a poet, Daniel?
Well, after a fashion.
Do you still write poetry?
I do occasionally, yes. It's not with the frequency that I used to, but I like to think what I write now is better.
Are you radical? Do you do new things?
I'm actually really not. I'm very traditional. I love rhyme and meter and form, and I know Alan wouldn't agree with it, but I liked Robert Frost's line about free verse, where he said writing a poem without meter is like playing tennis without a net.
And you are fantastically busy at the moment, and you've talked, it's just as far as writing is concerned, you are writing something which you're being mysterious about, but also Woman in Black, we've spoken about, the theatre, 3 films at the recent Toronto Film Festival. This is a fairly astonishing rate that you're working at.
Oh, thank you. Well, I'm lucky enough to love what I do, and I just keep doing it. I don't really have any plans to slow down or take a break. I'm having a short holiday, but yeah, I'm really enjoying my time at the moment, and enjoying the fact that I'm getting to work with a lot of people who are giving me these opportunities to show more of what I can do and learn from them, and that's it's a constant learning process, I hope. And yeah.
We had James McAvoy on the show just the other day, and he mentioned the fact that you started rehearsals for Frankenstein, and I saw this quote from you saying you think it's one of the best scripts that you've seen, the most exciting scripts. Just what can you tell us about Frankenstein and James McAvoy?
Well, particularly, that comment was made in reference to films coming out of studios. That because it is the best script I've seen coming out of a studio, because it's so it has so much more imagination and originality than a lot of those scripts sometimes do. I don't want to tell you too much about it, but basically,
just tease us a little.
Well, basically, I play Igor, the hunchbacked assistant of Frankenstein, played by James McAvoy, and we see Igor granted much more of a backstory than we have ever seen him given before, and a lot more depth, hopefully. And it's really about these guys who are at the forefront of technology, one of whom is incredibly ambitious, and the other one of whom has to sort of temper his ambition with morality, I suppose. And but really it's about, it's sort of it's the Social Network in the 1850s. It's about these two guys kind of warring over these principles of technology.
Wow, which sounds absolutely fascinating.
And it's an adventure, yeah.
And as soon as you say Igor, listeners of a certain age will think of Young Frankenstein and Marty Feldman.
And they should. It's the definitive one so far.
So that's Frankenstein.
Yeah, it's Igor. Yeah, I was watching it again recently because I do think. Because I'm not going to be completely channeling Marty Feldman. I was going
to say that'll be a slightly different film.
Yeah, but I do think we've got there's a little homage to Young Frankenstein in there somewhere. So we pay our dues.
Daniel, a pleasure as ever to have you on the show, and
Thank
I think
you very much,
maybe this was the first interview you've ever done without mention of the HP guy, but anyway.
God, it might have been. You might have just done it. Well done.
Okay.
If it did, I brought it up, so it was my fault. Thank you very much, sir.
Daniel, thanks for your time, sir.
No worries. Thanks. It's a pleasure.
Thank you. Cheers. Bye-bye.